Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden and Will Southard.
Welcome back to the PPP. It's time for the flavor of the week. My name is Brian. Thanks again for listening. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching and keep on telling those friends. That's what helps us grow this here Pigskin Party. So if you're listening to the main episode, you'll know that there is no Will this week, but it doesn't matter because we've got a better replacement. Mr. Tommy Yu is the new co-host, not replacing Will long time, but adding to the flavor that we bring here on the PPP. Tommy, how you feeling in your second ever co-host episode?
You know, I had huge shoes to fill. I don't feel like I did Will justice just yet, but that's okay. This is just my first show. Hopefully I'll have hundreds more to get a little bit better, but honestly, Regina was a huge treat. Just being able to hear her talk about, Lamar and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I have our fearless, amazing audio engineer / producer over in Anthony, kind of making sure everything's reined in. We have you as a host. I mean, how can I fail? I just show up and I look good. So I mean, you guys are doing it, and this I feel like a sports athlete at the end of like a game where they say all the politically correct things. No, it was the team. It wasn't me. You guys made me look. But no, it's, in all seriousness. I feel like you guys really set me up to look pretty solid. So I've been looking forward to this show now because I know now we just get to relax and maybe throw the script out a little bit, right?
I'll say that don't worry about being fitting in Will's shoes. They're probably pretty nasty. So I would avoid.
Imagine like Hobbit shoes, like it's tearing at the seams right now. There's some cheese growing and be like, yo, we got to get you some new shoes.
Or worst case, he's got like special custom ordered Tom Brady just plastered over the front of the shoes.
No. Giovanni Bernard, you forgot.
One shoe is Brady, and now
on
is
Gio
Gio Bernard.
That Giovanni Bernard has once had his feet inside. It's his new thing.
Yeah. Use Gio shoes. Okay, well that can be his thing and only his thing. So because we don't have another guest, we're gonna bring in our producer Anthony Weiner to join us for this special flavor of the week. We're gonna be calling an audible. It's gonna be a little different than what we had planned. Anthony, how you feeling, man?
Good. I'm feeling good. I look forward to producing this every week, but then when I'm on it, it's just as fun. Then I'm producing it and I'm on it. It's like I'm hitting keys and I'm, searching levels and I'm checking everything while I have to be here on camera, and it keeps me busy. It's really fun, and I'm excited to do this episode with you guys.
So for those that are not watching on YouTube, Anthony, you wouldn't have seen this anyway, but he produced the main episode in like a Kentucky backwoods tank top. But when he's on camera, he goes and gets his favorite Snuggie Matthew Stafford Lions jersey. That also inspires Tommy to go and get his Jason Kelce number 62 white Philadelphia Eagles jersey. Me, I still have a t-shirt on, but I got my little Dan Marino here to keep me company. Guys, I mentioned we're going to do something a little different this week. So we had a palate cleanser planned, which I'll save for next week. And our main topic I mentioned on the main episode was going to be a dissection of possible destinations for Aaron Rodgers. We're not going to do that. We're calling the audible. Tommy, you're brand new as a co-host of the show, so we're like, you know what? Let's just have a fun little get to know each other session. We can ask each other questions, talk about some ideas for how we can really make this show better. It might be a short episode, it might be a long episode, who knows? But how do you guys feel about that? You want to just let's just improv and see where it goes.
Let's do it.
Oh, we're throwing out the script at the right time because I don't know if I trust Will enough to go all off script, but luckily we have a good center of folks here, so let's see how great Brian is as a host when we just throw out the script and say, oh, for those of you who don't know, Brian is phenomenal. He puts together this amazing show doc with all great pertinent information, and literally all I did was just show up, and that's it. That's how great he is. And so I'm excited for the world to see how amazing Brian is, because now we're saying, hey, let's throw that out and just vibe and see what happens. So I'm really excited to get to know Brian more, and of course Anthony. I have an obsession with Anthony, but that's okay. I'm leaning into that pretty hard.
I'm flattered.
And, I can't blame you there. And thank you for the kind words. I will say this. Show notes, no show notes. Will never reads them. It really doesn't really matter. I think he shows up and glances at things 5 minutes before we record. But you know what? That's one of the reasons we love him. So he does well. There's no funny hat this week. We are going to improv. I don't know how I'm going to do without a script. We will see. But here's where we want to start it off. So every flavor of the week, if this is your first time listening, before we go into our flavor of the week topic, which is a topic that is still NFL related, but it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily news oriented. It's just a various, let's call it tangential NFL topic. But before we go into that, because we record these episodes back to back, so we just got done recording the main episode 5 minutes ago, we have what we like to call a palate cleanser. It's a completely non-NFL related topic that we throw in the middle of our main episode and our flavor of the week topic as a way to literally cleanse your palate, to make you feel fresh, to kind of reset your brain before we jump right back into some NFL. It tends to be pop culture centered. We've talked about movies, shows, video games, cancel culture. I mean, we've talked about all sorts of different things. So since we're moving the actual topic idea I had in mind to next week, what we're going to do is let's just talk about pop culture in general. Tommy, he's guested a few times, but he's a brand new co-host for the Pigskin Party podcast. So Tommy, I want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about the kind of pop culture you seek out. What do you digest? What are you into?
That's a great question, and I'm going to put it out there. And hey, this is just meant to have fun, so let's shatter all the barriers. So those of you on YouTube who are looking at me, I am an Asian American. I am Korean. But any stereotypes that you may hold of Asians, I feel like doesn't apply to me very well. I don't watch anime very much. I am not a doctor, unfortunately. And I'm not amazing at like a piano or anything. So
and guys, like if you're watching or listening, you can hold your we had to fill our diversity quota comments. Okay, thank you.
There we go. Now we're good. Now we're gonna get all the ratings. We should be
That's
good.
Right. That's right.
But no, a lot of the times people are like, "Oh, did you hear that K-pop song?" Or "Do you watch this anime?" And I'm so heartbroken. I'm like, I feel like I should, but I don't. But as far as it comes to pop culture and things, I feel like I'm almost completely off of social media. But because of podcasting and things, that brings me back. So those of you who use Twitter and things, go follow Brian, Will, Anthony. They're going to be much more fun than I am. I usually only tweet whenever I get tagged in certain things, but that's just because that's how I just grew up. One of my jobs actually is a lot of digital content creation and managing other people's social media accounts and stuff. So the last thing I want to do when I get home is, okay, now let me check on my Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I'm just like, all right, I'm burnt out. So it's funny because I almost get all of my pop culture, like the way I consume it is strictly through Reddit. I am a degenerate when it comes to Reddit. I have like 18 accounts specifically for certain topics and then other burner accounts. But
I didn't know there was such thing as a burner Reddit account. You're enlightening me, Tommy.
Oh, don't let Reddit consume you the way it consumed me. There are so many terrible people on there, but me being a Philly fan, of course, I'm one of them and I identify as trash. But a lot of the times where I listen to the show or even on the show doc where you guys are actually talking about like real life pop culture things, I'm like, oh God, the fact that I'm so unhip and don't know what the heck is going on. No, spoiler alert, there was something on the Palate Cleanser, which I am assuming is a show. I'm not 100% sure about it. I saw it and fear struck my heart. I was like, I'm going to have to pretend to know what they're talking about. But if for those of you who don't know, the last Palate Cleanser I was on, Brian almost just fired me. He almost launched me out of a cannon when I talked about the Mandalorian Star Wars. Like, how dare this guy come back on? So out of a lot of begging and pleading, he's let me back on. But this is just a long-winded way of saying I'm not the most up-to-date when it comes to pop culture as I feel like I should. But if it's not on Reddit or like on the front page, there's a pretty good chance I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Well, the way I see this then is the Palate Cleanser is going to be kind of like your pop culture education each week.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask you or expect you to have watched the movies or seen the shows or played the video games or any of the stuff that we talk about. We're going to teach you, we're going to educate you about what is good and what
Tommy,
is not.
Today we're going to be talking about The Lion King. If you don't know what that is, it was some animated film about, wait for it, lions. Have you seen it? I'll be like, what, did this come out like last year? What is this? You're trying to trick me? I've never heard of this before.
All right. Now, in all seriousness, if you haven't watched The Lion King, I'm not sure we can proceed. That is a classic.
Spoiler alert, I've watched Lion King, but it's been within the last, 5 to 8 years. Like, it's been pretty recently compared to when it came out. But, hey, I'm catching up. Don't worry.
You could have watched it yesterday, and I would still count it. So we'll give you the pass on that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the Palate Cleanser going forward being an educational opportunity for you. Anthony, let's talk to you a little bit. I know that you told me over the weekend you binge watched Lucifer or what?
Lucifer, yes.
Yeah.
I love that show.
So tell us about Lucifer and tell us about how you approach pop culture in general.
So Lucifer, to begin, it's a fictional crime drama, and it's about the devil coming to L.A. And so the devil now lives in L.A. And then, Lucifer is in L.A., things are going to happen. And so it's 5 seasons of this crazy story of like a whole bunch of different things happening. The devil falls in love, which is like one of those things where it's just crazy to think about in that way. And it's actually based on DC comic characters. So you got Lucifer, God, Amenadiel. You got the different angels, and they're all coming down to Earth because Lucifer's causing trouble. And he comes out here, owns a nightclub. And
Lucifer, the devil, getting in those shenanigans again.
Yeah. He has a power where he can get people to say their desires. And so he helps Detective Decker with the LAPD find out these different desires that these criminals may be having to solve murders. And it's a really good show. And then in between, you have the family drama. You have the drama between friends. You have the drama between the devil and God. The family
drama, like Satan Jr.? I don't really understand.
No, like God, like Satan,
drama?
God, and the other angels. I see. Because they're all related, Yes.
God, Dad. Got it. Okay.
Yep. But yeah, when it comes to pop culture, though, I'm into 5 things. Music, movies, golf, beer, and football. And if you want to talk about any of those 5 things, I can go all day. But another thing is I really like pop culture. I like to get into things that other people are into. I like to be a part of the social norm. I don't want to be an outcast. I'm not an introvert. I'm an extrovert. I love people. I love having conversations about different things. So if you have something that you're into, I want to know and I want to learn about it. So I just did a trend on TikTok. I just made a TikTok of a very popular trend because I'm like, I need to be a part of this. I like to be a part of things. I like to be involved. And so when I see something get popular, I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm all in.
Anthony actually brings up a really, really good point because I'm a first generation, so English is actually my second language. So pop culture is really important because I didn't want to get bullied. Not only am I talking with a heavy accent, barely knowing the language, but I need to know what other people like, so I have something to talk about. So similar to you, Anthony, it's very true. A lot of pop culture for me isn't peer pressure, but it's almost I need to know what's going on because I need to relate with my peers in some way. But how about you, Brian? What are some pop culture things that you're into? How do you consume it? What have you been into, really?
Well, anybody who's listened to the show before knows that I am a diehard Star Wars fan. It was something I grew up with. It was one of those things that just gripped me as a kid. The good guys, the bad guys, the Jedi, the Sith. There was just something about the Force and the way that story was told that just always spoke to me, to the point where I consume every bit of Star Wars content that I can, from video games. There's video games I played online for a decade. The same Star Wars video game for a decade. And obviously I've seen the movies dozens of times. I watch every single show. I love that Disney Plus is putting out these shows. There's one now with the Bad Batch animated. There's just something about Star Wars that will always be a step above every other pop culture piece and platform for me. It's an emotional thing. I'll be perfectly honest. When I found out that Disney was going to be releasing new Star Wars films for the sequel trilogy back in, I think they announced it back in like 2012 or something, I cried. Like, that's the kind of, and I cried. If you watch Mandalorian, and if you haven't, I'm sorry, it's been out for a while now. When Luke Skywalker comes in at the end, I legit bawled my eyes out. Like, that's the kind of, there's an emotional, almost identity attachment to me with Star Wars. So you guys have heard, I've mentioned it multiple times in the show. I will mention it again. That's number one. But some of the other things that I really enjoy consuming, I love Marvel, comics in general, but I really love Marvel. So I have followed the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from the start. I'm actually rewatching it now with my 7-year-old son, who, by the way, my son is a football fan, a Star Wars fan, a Marvel fan. I have literally already done my job as a parent. He's only 7. So
you're going to have to give me some parenting tips whenever I enter fatherhood, because you need to tell me the secrets. But go on.
I'm not even sure I know the secrets. I just introduced it to him, and his entire room is decked out in Star Wars. We have been Star Wars characters for Halloween. I have pictures of him as a stormtrooper and me as Darth Vader. He's just taken for it. But he also loves football. I took him to a Jets-Dolphin game back when we lived in New York. I took him to MetLife Stadium. He loved it. He was only like 4 at the time, but he was there. He was blowing his whistle. He's played DFS with me. He wants to set DFS lineups on Sunday. Kid's 7 years old. He loves what I love. It could not be greater. So we're rewatching the entire MCU now. So we're like, I don't know, 12 out of the 23 movies in, and he's just loving it. We watch like 30 minutes every night before he goes to sleep. So he's really into that. Fantasy in general, I tend to be in. So I loved Lord of the Rings, the Harry Potter movies, superhero stuff in general. So I really like The Boys on Amazon. Looking forward to that 3rd season that's coming out. Anything that is, I think, takes me out of the real world, right? Yeah. Something that is not just, don't get me wrong, a good classic drama. I don't know if, I was about to ask you, Tommy, you probably haven't seen it because it's pop culture, but Mayor of Easttown, have you at least heard of Mayor of Easttown? Have you seen it mentioned on social media?
Yeah.
Kate Winslet, it's on HBO.
Kate Winslet, yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
You at least know who Kate Winslet is.
She's
Fair
the
enough.
one that says,
She says those things in those movies with those people and the place.
Polarizingly great.
Exactly. Have you heard of Titanic at least? Come on, Titanic.
Yeah, that's
James Cameron.
You know what you're doing right now reminds me of a segment we should do. It's when Tommy tries to summarize something pop culture, like Titanic. That's about a boat.
100%.
And in the boat, they have all the great stuff. Rich people come on, and some kid somehow gets on. I don't really remember how. Oh, he might have stole it. Falls in love with some girl named Rose, and then she's a total butthead and lets him die. That's
lets
him
freeze to death. He turns into an icicle. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
See,
so
I know Titanic.
You do.
How dare
Rose equal Kate Winslet. Okay, now we've caught up, and I love that idea for a segment. Definitely, we're going to come back to that. So it's about she's a detective in a small town in Pennsylvania. Actually, Tommy, there's your real reason to watch
There's my in.
There's your in. But I love that too. It's gritty. It's very realistic. So it's not that I don't like that, but I love nothing more than a good, like, take me into a world that doesn't actually exist. Let me experience it. Let me live there. Let me enjoy it. That's what's really gonna appeal to me.
Well, I know what I like a lot about those kinds of movies or even books like Harry Potter. You know, they're references, kind of like metaphors to real life, but it's fiction. You know, like it's completely made up, but it's kind of referencing to real experiences that we have. And that's why I like it a lot, especially superheroes. You know, their powers are a lot of times someone's weakness. And the metaphor is it's somebody who wants this kind of power because they have this kind of weakness. And I think that's interesting.
I Oh, no, go, Brian.
I was going to say Stan Lee has quoted as, a lot of the characters, he created some of the most iconic characters in Marvel history, and it was because there were certain, like, felt like he had anger issues at times, so he created the Incredible Hulk, a guy who gets so angry that he turns into a massive, overpowered Hulk. So he actually mentioned some of his own personal weaknesses and insecurities, and you're 100% right, Anthony, and that's what he tended to write into these superhero characters.
Yeah, absolutely. All I was going to add in, not as beautiful or eloquently as you put, literally all I was going to mention is, for me, if it's not football/fantasy football related, music, I'm a huge music guy. I just not recently, but over a year or two ago, I just got my first turntable, got a bunch of fun albums and stuff like that I've been really diving into, so that's kind of what's splashing the wall behind me. So if it's not football/fantasy football related, music, and I'm really into videography. Like, I just got a new camera to do weddings and stuff. If it's not those 3 things, there's like a 90% chance I have no idea. Even when you're like, yeah, Tommy, like The Dark Knight, like Heath Ledger, everyone's watching. I'm like, yeah, Batman. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Robin came in. And,
wait. You have to watch The Dark Knight. Tell me you.
Oh no,
you
I
have
did.
to.
I did.
Oh, okay.
I watched. So
my wife hates superhero movies, and she loves The Dark Knight. Like, it is on another level.
It's good. It's not that I don't like it. It's just
you really did almost give me a heart attack there.
I know. You're like, all right, Anthony, how do we kick Tommy off of this call now? No, but it's like, for me, there's a very good chance I haven't seen it. I always joke around with all my friends. I could almost probably count on my hands and my toes the amount of movies I've seen in my life, which is not a good sign. But it's more ignorant. It's more like and I don't ever want to self-diagnose, but my self-diagnose of ADD, I'm like, can I really afford like 2 hours of this when I could just be pushing F5 on the NFL news, or looking at my fantasy and doing tinkering? Like, if I'm at the movies, I might have my phone out anyway, so that's maybe why I don't go to movie theater. So it's like this whole thing where it's not that the movie isn't good. It's just I'm from Philadelphia. I'm trash. So, I mean, it kind of checks out.
Well, spoiler alert, you can do both. You can do football and pop culture.
Yeah. But to defend Tommy here, though, it's not everything to have everything about movies to everybody. So if you're not into something like that, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're not interested in something, that's not personal to anybody. And some people may be like, oh, you're uncultured. It's like, no, that's not the case.
And I think the one thing I'll always say, kind of like what you said, it's not that I don't like the movies. Like, when I watch a good movie, I'm like, yo, this is so good. It's just I almost never go out of my way to watch a movie. And that's a me thing. That's not I'm too good for this. It's more like, I'm too lazy. Like, I'm so lazy. But if you, like, whatever show you just mentioned, Brian, oh, God, here we go. The Eastwood
Mayor of Easttown.
That's exactly what I just said, Anthony.
Like 100%
That's
what you just said.
Literally word for word what I just said. I'm sure that's a phenomenal show, but it's something where I'm just like, yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure I would love it, but I'm sure I would never watch it because I'm just that much of a butt.
I can actually pinpoint my love for shows and movies in general. It stems from my parents. So growing up, we literally had a closet that was stuffed with VHS. I mean, my parents they loved movies too. They collected movies to where we grew up, and so I've seen thousands and thousands of movies in my life because I was raised that way, and so I grew up and appreciated and a love for the movies. And we used to, as a family, watch shows. There weren't as many shows when we were growing. Now there's so many shows with Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and all that. But we would watch the X-Files as a family. We would watch some of those. Rescue 911 and Unsolved Mysteries and whatever it was, we would watch them so we would get together. So now, what do I do with my wife? We have shows that we watch. Once the sun is down and we're kind of getting ready for bed, we'll sit down and we'll watch a show most of the time. Now, if there's no good shows, then we'll find something else. But in general, like we just got done watching Mayor of Easttown, so that's part of our routine is we look forward to watching those shows. So it is ingrained in me. So I'm sure there's different reasons why we do or do not like pop culture.
Anthony, is there like a movie growing up where you're like, this not defines my childhood, but like this was my favorite movie growing up of all? It might not. Maybe
Spider-Man.
Now it might not be the best, but your favorite. What did you say?
Spider-Man. And I'd say that
the first one, Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire and everything.
Growing up, I was 20 when that came out. I was your age when that came out.
I, for some reason, I don't know why, kind of relate to that. Like I relate that to my own life, and just to see somebody so like, small. He felt small, and he was very. He wasn't known very well, and then he got this power, but he didn't use it for his advantage.
And it came with great responsibility.
Responsibility.
Iconic line.
I love that movie, and all three, and Tobey Maguire is a great actor for Spider-Man, and it's just, I don't know, that's the first movie that came to mind when you asked me that.
The rumors are that he's coming back in the next Spider-Man movie.
I heard that, and if he does, I will probably bawl my eyes out.
That would be crazy. I want to ask Brian the same thing minus Star Wars. Maybe, like, take Star Wars out. I'm sure that would have been your answer, but maybe. But before I ask Brian his favorite movie of his childhood, Anthony, I'm about to blow both of your socks off right now. I watched Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse, that animated movie.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
It was amazing.
That's good, isn't it?
Anthony, I just wanted to ask you, because I know obviously you seem like a Spider-Man fan. What did you think of that movie? Because I heard a sequel's coming out, and I've never been this hyped for a movie. Like, it's so random, but I loved it.
I was so unsure about it at first. I'm like, okay, what is this? What are they trying to do? Like, are we trying to, like, do some anime thing? Like, we're not, what's happening? I watched it, and the music in it, the drawing, just the artwork in it, and the music, it was just incredible. And the whole time, I'm, like, in it. I'm, like, I felt like I was in the universe with them. I was so excited. And then it ended, I'm like, whoa, I want to see more of that. Like, I want to see that all the time now. I'm like, wow, like, this was such a good take. And then we have the whole multiverse thing going. If we could make that live action, that'd be really cool. And imagine having, like, the animated dude coming into live action, even trying that. Like, that'd be interesting. Like, that'd just be so cool.
Yeah, I think the way that they kind of did everything was unbelievable to me. And kind of like you, a lot of people had the reservations, but then I heard all this hype with this movie, and I was like, all right, I'll finally watch it. And it was one of the movies where I actually had high expectations, which I don't like to have. No one likes, you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment, but I couldn't ignore the hype heading in. So I was like, there's no way it's going to measure up. And I watched it, and I was like, okay, it measured up. That was amazing.
It did.
So it's one of the movies for me I've watched multiple times, which is kind of sad because I don't watch many movies anyway. So maybe, like, out of all the movies I watch, I've probably seen that one the most. But it's one of the movies where no matter how many times I see it, I see something crazy or new or something awesome like that. So it's a lot of fun. But how about you, Brian? Besides Star Wars, sorry, I know Star Wars gets a lot of love in your heart, but are there any other movies where you're like, that was my favorite?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to mention that the Spider-Man movie, the rumors coming out are that they are going to tackle the Spider-Verse in the live-action Tom Holland Spider-Man No Way Home. So yeah, if you like the cartoon, this might be your way into the Marvel Universe. So obviously, there's so many movies I watched from my childhood. If I could say Star Wars, that would far and away because it had such an impact on my life. I'm going to cheat a little bit and say Indiana Jones because that's also George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, but that whole trilogy just really spoke to me. If I cannot use that because it's too close, then I would say The Goonies, which also is Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
So, yeah. So once these adventures, these kids, they find an old pirate ship, and I don't know. That's just something that spoke to me because of that sense of adventure. But I could go on. I could probably name dozens of movies.
Oh yeah,
because that's what I grew up on, right? Like a whole,
right.
E.T., Short Circuit, Willow. I mean, I could just keep going. What I want to do now is, it is still a football podcast, so I do at least want to have a little bit of football talk before Anthony, right on top of the segue, even with the quick change, nice. Before we wrap up this flavor of the week, but we can tie it into our childhoods, Anthony, I'll start with you on this because we've had a lot of discussions, in jest, but I actually think they're real. That you're a diehard Lions fan. You've grown up a Lions fan. You're from Michigan. You live in LA now. But your childhood hero Matthew Stafford is the quarterback of the Rams. Tell us a little bit, maybe a fond memory of what endeared you so much to the Lions growing up.
So my dad, he grew up on 8 Mile in Detroit. This was before Eminem. But he was always a diehard Lions fan, nothing else. It was always Detroit Lions. He went to games. He knew other people who knew the players, he was involved with the organization. The big fan. Him and his brothers would go to the games all the time. And then he had me 25 years ago. And while I was growing up, he had a shrine. It was like a Detroit Lions shrine. And I would just pass in the hallway. I'd just be looking at it in awe. I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. When I was finally of age, he brought me to the Hall of Fame. And he told me every time we passed a Lions player, or like a Lions spot, he'd be like, yep, I saw that guy. Like, I went to this game. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, it's blowing my mind here. And then I finally went to a football game. I didn't get to go to the actual game because it was him and his brothers, but I got to tailgate. I was so young, I don't even remember, but I remember watching it at a restaurant with my mom. It was me, my brother, and my mom and their wives. We were watching the game, and we actually saw them on TV. It was real fun. I'm like, wow, like, this is really cool. I really like this whole, like, environment. I like this vibe. Like, this is really cool. I started getting into football. I was big into high school football. When I was in high school, I was always too small to play, but I wanted to be involved, so I was in the marching band. So that was really cool. I was the mascot too. That was fun. But I really liked football. I'm like, okay, professional football is a whole nother world. Like, these guys are good, really, really good, and they're so much fun to watch. But the Detroit Lions specifically, something about the way that Matthew Stafford moves his feet, something about the way he exits the pocket or throws it out of the pocket, like, just something about the way he plays kind of got me hooked. And I'm like, okay, I like watching this guy play. I like watching the Lions play football. And I was hooked. And my dad had a lot to do with it, but I think also had a lot to do with it was the way that Stafford played. When I finally got to go to a Lions game, one of the best experiences of my life, it was Soldier Field, 2013. It was so cold. And I got to see Calvin Johnson's last touchdown. So that's...
Wow.
And I'll never forget that. I'm like, wow, I just saw this legend score his last touchdown.
Okay, I'm only slightly less convinced now that you'll be a Rams fan. You've won over at least a small smidge. The arrow has gone down. Tommy, how about
Cool.
you? Tell us a little bit about what endeared you to the Eagles growing up.
Yeah, so of course, being born and raised right in Philadelphia and around the Philadelphia area had a huge influence on it. But my journey with the NFL was very odd, actually. I never really liked football growing up because I was very overweight. I struggled with my weight my whole life. But the reason I bring this up is because my dad, he's just a standard Korean dude who doesn't really know how to speak English well. He saw his son pretty fat, and he was like, yo, you should play football. But the reason he was saying that to me wasn't because I would be technically serious. Like, oh, you're just big, so you'd be good. So in my head, I was like, no. And the way to rebel, I'm not going to play football. I'm going to go play soccer or football. And so I played soccer my whole life, and then it was to the point where in elementary school, I was in elementary school when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And I remember my elementary school was having like an Eagle Day, obviously, because we're in Philadelphia. And everyone were to wear an Eagles jersey or something Eagles related. And like I said, I did not like football. So I remember my mom called one of my friend's mom on the PTO or something saying, all right, we have no idea what to get, we don't know who's good. This person, and this is with the Eagles, with Brian Dawkins, Jeremiah Trotter, Westbrook, McNabb, funny, Freddie X, Todd Pinks. They had all these players, but the person who says, oh, you should get a Hugh Douglas jersey. By no means is this Hugh Douglas slander. That's not what... Hugh, if you're listening to this show, which I'm sure you are because millions of people listen to it, I love you. You're phenomenal. All I'm saying is, I did not have a strong grasp. And for some reason, this mom was like, oh yeah, Hugh Douglas is the jersey to get. I showed up in a Hugh Douglas jersey. I still have all these pictures, and it's funny to have these memories attached to it. What really got me into football, as I grew older, I started to lose a little bit more weight, and I felt like I fell into football on my own terms. And so I started to play the old NFL street games, and I just fell in love. Like, I would always play the Eagles because I'm from Philly. So in NFL Street, McNabb had the big afro and stuff like that, and Brian Dawkins played both ways. It was awesome. And so I grew up more and more, and I really fell in love with the Eagles because of Brian Dawkins. I felt like he embodied everything an athlete should be, but what a Philadelphia athlete should be. And it got so big, and my obsession with the Eagles and Brian Dawkins grew so big when he was just recently inducted to the Hall of Fame a few years ago. As soon as he got into Canton, I went to my wife and said, we need to schedule an appointment to go to, or not appointment, we have to go to Canton. Like, I have to see his bust. I have to be there on his first year being inducted. So, my wife puts up with me. Of course, like, okay, yeah, we'll go. So we eventually ended up going. I got to see the bust. A very emotional moment for me, being like, thank you for letting me fall in love with this game the right way, kind of thing. And so I fell in love with them. Another quick side note, I also moved over to Kansas City I stayed there for about 2 years, and my joke always was, oh, no, I moved to Kansas. They're like, oh, why did you go there? It was because of a job opportunity. But I was like, oh, I'm following Andy Reid. I wasn't very happy with how the Eagles treated Andy Reid. So when I found out he was going to Kansas City, I moved to Kansas City. So I'm actually happy because obviously Kansas City is kind of not on top of the world, but they're trending up while the Eagles probably haven't. So I always felt like a bandwagoner also cheering on the Kansas City Chiefs because two different, conferences. I could be an Eagles fan. I could be a Chiefs fan. That should be fine.
You're hedging your bet.
And I always, exactly. And so I was like, oh man, my bandwagon, I was like, no, I did my time. I lived in Kansas City for 2 years before Patrick Mahomes was like, I'm allowed to be a Chiefs fan and be loud about it. So the Chiefs are my wife's favorite team. We actually went to that one playoff game.
Did you meet her in Missouri?
No, I actually met her in Pennsylvania, and then we both moved out. And she kind of liked football a little bit, but it wasn't until she was in Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium, the Sea of Red. We went to that one playoff game where the Chiefs played the Steelers, and the reason why this is a little bit more historic is it was the first time ever when a team who scored a touchdown lost to a team that did not score a touchdown. That's when the Steelers, Le'Veon Bell had like 200 yards rushing. They kicked like 40 field goals, and the Chiefs scored like one touchdown, and they still lost. And so that was kind of cool. But my wife, she went to a bunch of Chiefs games, and I still am so angry because every single football game she's been to has remember when I said we went to Canton? We specifically went to Canton because the Chiefs played the Browns that week. So we went to go see the Chiefs play the Browns, and then we all saw Canton. But my big inside joke against her is, so we lived in Kansas City, so we saw a bunch of Chiefs games. Then we went to Ohio, to Cleveland, to watch the Chiefs again. But we were just 2 hours from Philly, and you've never been to the Link and never saw the Eagles. So it's my salt who was saying, That's not fair. And then
She
her
owes
response
you.
is,
She owes you.
Well, Patrick Holmes is more fun to watch. But I was like, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I was
but
going to say,
first
I
of all,
can't argue with that point.
How dare you? How dare you? But no, this is just my long way of saying I love the Eagles through the thick and thin. And this might sound a little dramatic, but you know, a lot of people go through a lot of things in their lives. I don't want to be as dramatic as like tragedies and stuff. But there are points in my life where it was a little bit lower. But the one thing that always stayed there for me were the Eagles. Even if they might have disappointed me in the season, it does not matter. Because on Sunday, for 2, 3, 4 hours, I could turn on the TV. No matter what was happening in my life, I had the same team show up that I can watch and kind of feel a part of that community. So no matter where I was in the world, I don't care that the Chiefs are better. I don't care what's going on. To me, the Eagles are now a part of my identity to the point where it was in my wedding. I think we walked out to the Eagles fight song. Like, they're so embedded into the bleed green culture. So, yeah, I love the Eagles.
I want to add something, but so on your side, when the Eagles beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, which is probably amazing for you, I actually was in Arizona going to school at the time.
By the way, as a Dolphins fan, it was also amazing for me just to see the Patriots lose. It was beautiful.
And I had family north of where I lived in Arizona. They were all Eagles fans. So I went to an Eagles party. And I obviously have to root for the Eagles. I'm not going to be the one guy who's rooting against the team that the party's for. I'm like, okay, yeah, go Eagles. Let's go. I don't care. I thought it was exciting because it was kind of cool to see a backup quarterback just be an underdog like that. That was exciting. I was so excited. I was a little drunk, so I'm like having the best time of my life over there. Oh, yeah, it was a good time. But, yeah, I was rooting for the Eagles, so.
I definitely want to ask Brian about his background with Miami and stuff like that and how he got to love the Dolphins. But right before I do, I want to show you guys. I wish it was my background, but what I'm looking at my setup here, maybe. Sorry for people who might get motion sickness, but I have this set up right up here. It has one of the, obviously, newspapers that I framed of them winning. That's the Philadelphia Inquirer. And then I have another one over here. That's another newspaper that was more recently near me that I framed, and of course a little
So if you're just listening, he's got newspaper clippings framed on the wall from the Eagles Super Bowl victory. Multiple.
And also
cool.
I have another one over here, which is too far away, but it is the picture of Brady getting sack fumbled by Brandon Graham in the Super Bowl seal, it autographed by Brandon Graham right there. So every day I walk in, I look at it, give it a little bit of kiss and say, Brandon Graham, I love you, man. Just know that you
we
are
need to
loved.
show Will that next time he's on. Next week.
100%, I will.
Because Will is not shy about showing his Patriots memorabilia from Edelman's catch and his Brady jersey. So you showing a jersey or a picture of Brady getting sacked by Brandon Graham. Oh, that's 100% happening next week.
Oh, I'll do it, and I'll have the biggest smile on my face.
So will I. Trust me.
But yeah, about the Dolphins, bro. What has really gotten you so attached to the lovable Dolphins?
So I was actually raised not necessarily as an NFL. I mean, I like the NFL, but my obsession with the NFL didn't come till later. But I was raised in the South. I was raised in North Carolina. My father is originally from Mississippi, and he went to college at, this is a Brian Dawkins tie, he went to college at Clemson. And he raised us to be, we lived in North Carolina, but we would drive down to South Carolina as a family and stay in Clemson for the weekend at least once a year to go to Death Valley to watch a football game there. And there's just something about, football in the South that is just unparalleled, unmatched anywhere else. I ended up going to school at Florida State later because we moved to Florida when I was 16, specifically so that I could go to a big football school. I only applied to Florida State. I didn't apply anywhere else. I had a scholarship for the state of Florida, so I knew I had to stay in the state of Florida. There was no way in hell I was going to go to the University of Florida because, I'm not going to be a Gator. University of Miami, I lived in South Florida. I wanted to at least get a little far away. Florida State made sense. I actually was there in 1999. My freshman year, we won the national championship, went undefeated with Chris Wenke as the quarterback, and went like wire to wire, number one all the way. It was fantastic. But going back, so I was raised just loving football, college football specifically. My mother is originally from Florida. Now, my mom doesn't really like football, but she's got lots. She's one of 7 kids, so she's got multiple siblings who live in South Florida. So when we would go to visit, I would be introduced to the Dolphins. Now, living in North Carolina, this is well before the Panthers existed. The closest team to us was the Falcons. And so my dad was actually a Falcons fan. He'd watch and he would just be like, okay, but Clemson he bled orange. He still bleeds orange to this day. I kid you not, my father wears an orange shirt or some sort of orange memorabilia every single day of his life.
It's a good time to be a Clemson fan, too.
It's a very good time.
Couple of handful of years,
Oh,
right?
It has been a wonderful time. He suffered for many years. He has earned this. I'm super excited for him.
He does.
So yeah, side note, it was difficult my freshman year going to Florida State because I also bled orange. But Florida State was the best team in the country. So when I watched the Florida State Clemson game my freshman year, and I literally didn't cheer for anybody. I just stood there.
I was want happy everyone to have fun.
Yeah, I was happy. I was happy that the Seminoles won because obviously we were on our way to a national championship that year. But I didn't cheer. And then second year, I actually started cheering for Florida State. And now, I've fondness for Clemson, but I'm a Seminole. I bleed garnet and gold. That's what I did because that's where I went to college. But we would visit my family in South Florida. Even moved to South Florida for a year because my dad got a job down there, and then we moved back to North Carolina. But that was my introduction, as I was always introduced to the Dolphins. So I loved the colors, aqua and orange. I loved the fact that it was a dolphin. Like, I don't know, I just loved everything about it. Those white jerseys, the all-white jerseys with merino, and you look back to, like, the 70s, the fact that they have the only undefeated team, I just really resonate. There's pictures of me in Dolphins gear at, like, age 6. So, I mean, this is something that, even in North Carolina, and then, of course, when we actually moved to Florida, so we moved to Florida for good when I was 16. So I went to high school for 3 years, went to school at Florida State, as I mentioned. Then I really just started again. Then I embraced it, because now I was living, like, 15 minutes from what used to be Joe Robbie, what used to be Pro Player, what used to be Sunset. I mean, it's always a different. I think it's Hard Rock now. But I was that close to the stadium, and so I got to see a lot of Dolphins games in person. And just as my love for the NFL itself grew, my love for the Dolphins just kind of went with that. So I love the NFL as a whole. There's a reason I do an NFL podcast instead of just a Dolphins podcast. I just love everything about the sport. I actually don't watch college football all that much anymore. And I was obsessed with college football. I did not miss a game when I was in college. I went to every single second of every single Florida State game for my entire time there. But just something about the NFL and the quality of the play and the strategy behind it and the physicality. I love the intrigue. Obviously, that's one of the reasons I do this podcast. The fact that we can talk about is Aaron Rodgers going to play quarterback for the Packers? Is he going to go do Jeopardy, or is he going to get traded to a team? Is it an AF? There's just so much. I love the speculation. I love everything about it. So it might not be the traditional path to being a Dolphins fan or being a team, somebody like Anthony who grew up in Michigan and it just made sense. My love is strong. I love the entire NFL. I have other teams that I like. This year, I'm probably going to be a Washington football team fan. I just like. First of all, I love that they're called. Sorry, Tommy. Oh. I love that they're called football team, but this is really from a football perspective. I love that they're called football team. I love that they have Fitzpatrick, which is one of my favorite players in the NFL. They're going to have an amazing defense.
Defense is nice too. The way they play the game, it throws it back a little bit. It is fun.
How can you not like Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron? Right, just beat cancer. He's just a likable guy.
I agree with
that.
I
have other teams I like, but I love the league. But I will always love the Dolphins above and beyond.
Earlier, Tommy said a word, bandwagon, and I've been with the same team my entire life. Like, I haven't been alive on this earth.
No one will ever
not as a Lions
you for being
fan.
a bandwagon fan when you say you're a Lions. No one will be like, oh, you're
I'll
be
see,
like,
what it's saying is I'll never do it.
Yeah.
I'm so attached to this team. I've been to many of their games, and I've just, it's like, I have a flag on the wall. When this jersey's not on me, it's on a hanger tacked to the wall. I'm not even kidding. It's right there.
That's
like
awesome.
Next to Tyler's jersey.
It's physically impossible for me to be a bandwagon fan. I have tried.
It is.
Not from a football perspective, but I've never really been into the NBA. I like March Madness. I love college basketball, but I've never really been into the NBA. But however, when the Heat had LeBron and Dwayne Wade and
Bosh, all those
Bosh,
guys.
right? So they were dominant. I'm like, ooh, this is my opportunity, and I live in Florida, so it's not even like I was a band. But I still, my heart wasn't in it. I did like watching the Knicks and Heat rivalry in the 90s with, like, Alonzo Mourning and Patrick Ewing. I did like that. That was cool. I had a little bit of passion there. But coming back to it, I just didn't feel anything. And maybe it was because they assembled an all-star team, and it was just like I watched them win their first championship, and it was just like, yay. Oh, cool. I can't. If
One
I don't
thing
have a
I wanted
passion
to
for it, I
ask
can't.
both of you, just rapid fire, just to kind of tie it back to childhood and football. I'll go to you, Anthony. First is, who is your favorite not childhood, but who is one of your favorite players you've had the privilege to watch so far, and your favorite memory associated with that player? Just right off the top of your head. We did not study for this. We're just winging it. But Brian gets the luxury of getting to think about it a little bit over there.
I would have given the same answer even if you asked me first.
Perfect. So you let that marinate. How about you, Anthony? Who is one of your favorite players you have seen up to this point?
I literally have him right here. Go ahead, Anthony.
I want to say Matthew Stafford, but if, to get away from the Stafford conversation, because he's obviously my favorite player, second would probably be either Golden Tate or Calvin Johnson.
Okay.
I only saw Calvin Johnson in one game, but every game that I went to after that, I saw Golden Tate play.
Guy was a cheat code in Madden. Megatron.
Oh, yes, he was.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, I'd have to go with probably Golden Tate.
You have like a favorite memory or like a play or something with Golden Tate where you're just like, oh yeah.
Oh, definitely. It was we were against the Redskins. They were the Redskins at the time. They were playing at Ford Field. Tyler and I had really nice seats right on I think it was the 10-yard line, and then like in like the 5th row up, beautiful spot. It was amazing. Stafford snapped the ball. It was like 4 seconds left, and he had one pass to make for the touchdown to win the game, and he passed it to Golden Tate, and he got into the end zone and won the game. It was the most exciting moment in football of my entire life. I was so excited. And ever since then, I've just been like, wow, like that was amazing. I'll never forget that moment. But yeah, Golden Tate would he caught the ball, and that's probably the best moment that I could think of.
So Tommy, I want you to go next because I'll go last, and then we'll wrap it up there.
Awesome. Yeah. My favorite, of course, was Brian Dawkins, but I kind of want to get away from that. But one of my favorite plays by Dawkins, of course, is when he absolutely took Algie Crumpler's soul in that one playoff game against Atlanta. He literally absolutely crushed him, and I was like, that man literally just murdered someone on the field, and they're televising this? I didn't think this is what football was about. But if we take Brian Dawkins out, because that's so obvious, this might surprise some of you, but it's Devin Hester. Devin Hester made me fall in love with the game. So I remember I was at a Super Bowl party, and this was Chicago versus Indianapolis.
Yep.
In that rainy game
Opening
in Miami,
kickoff.
actually. And I remember I was just sitting in with a bunch of my friends, and the whole storyline was, are they going to kick it to Hester, or are they not going to kick it to what's going to happen? And, I kind of knew a lot about football at this point, but, at that point, I didn't care. I loved Peyton Manning because he's awesome, but I was like, hey, here's the underdog. This would be cool. And with all this talk happening, we all know what happens next. The kickoff, the flash, the Devin Hester, you are ridiculous! Someone who cemented himself into history, not just as one of the greatest kick returners exactly of all times, but to do it on that stage, it doesn't get any better. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah.
And Devin Hester's career might have not went how a lot of people have thought, but to me, one of the most electrifying.
He's the greatest returner to ever play
definitely.
the game. He might not have done it from a wide receiver standpoint, but he should be in the. He's a Hall of Fame type of talent.
He's the first player to have a 100 speed rating in Madden.
That is enough to say you're a part of history. But to me, I just get really excited when I talk about Devin Hester because I feel like a lot of times everyone knows who he is, and he definitely doesn't. He's not underrated by any stretch of the imagination. But sometimes I really want to bring people in saying, when the kickoff rules were a little bit different, there was a lot of people who kind of sat up a little bit when it was fourth down and he was getting a punt. There was people who kind of sat up a little bit when the game is supposed to be boring. And Devin Hester, for me, he just locked it up, and that's when I fell hot and heavy for football. I was like, wow, this is just so much fun. But how about you, Brian? I think we all know what's going to happen, but I'm also really excited to hear some fun stories on
Not
why.
a shocker here. But by the way, if you've never watched it, the two of you, but also anybody listening, look up the Devin Hester highlights where it has all of his kick returns. You talk about chills. Every time I watch that, I get chills. There was something about punt returns are fun anyway, and they're so rare, but he just made it look so easy. He was just above and beyond anyone who ever returned kicks. All right, so it's no surprise. If anybody's ever watched the show on YouTube at all, you'll see that there's a little Funko character who sits next to me. Put him in the camera there. Number 13 for the Miami Dolphins. Who else but Dan Marino? That's who I grew up with. I grew up with, over a decade of the Dolphins always making the playoffs and always being competitive. We never won a Super Bowl. We went to a Super Bowl when I was 4 years old. Obviously, I don't remember any of that, but that's what I knew. I knew Marino. You know, Stafford. Marino is on another level as far as because he also had a strong team around him. As far as, first of all, there's Ace Ventura. Tommy, have you seen Ace Ventura?
Yeah, that Jim Carrey movie. Yeah,
okay, you at least know it's Jim Carrey.
See,
I'll take it.
Nuggets enough. So if we were to ever do a segment, I know just barely enough to try to BS enough. But all of you guys are saying he literally has no idea what he's saying, but he's trying to be confident.
Well, Dan Marino is literally in the movie. He is a key character in the movie, like as himself. Dan Marino is. So
what I loved about that movie so much was that they actually brought football into it, and so that was exciting.
So, Tommy, this is homework for you. You got to watch Ace Ventura.
I might actually have to watch this now.
You have to.
You do.
Dope.
For the football aspect of it, like there's an actual, they play in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's like there's a whole, the plot revolves around Dan Marino and football. So, yeah,
hey,
that tells you all you need to know. But
set a reminder for me to watch Ace Ventura.
I love it. Right on the show. All right, we'll ask you about it next week. I'm going to hold you accountable to that. And it's funny. Maybe the wife likes it too. So, but here's my favorite, and there's so many good Dan Marino memories, but the fake spike. Monday Night Football against the Jets.
Okay.
Rushing the team to the line.
Okay.
Giving the symbol like he's going to spike the ball close to the goal line, and the Jets defense just kind of, and what does he do? Nope. He takes the snap, fakes the spike, throws the touchdown, boom, against the Jets, who... I lived in New York for 13 years. The Jets have been awful. I don't really hate them, but at that time I hated the Jets, right? Because that's my Dallas to you, or was. Now it's the Patriots. Now I have a hatred for the Patriots. But at that time, beating New York that night, the fake spike, what an iconic play. Dan Marino, when he retired in '99, man, things just weren't the same. By the way, that's also the year my freshman year in college. So that coincided maybe with me just kind of diving into college football even more, because the Seminoles won the national championship. Marino retired. The Dolphins got bad.
It's like passing the torch almost.
Correct. But now the Seminoles are awful. My Dolphins are actually looking up. I have an NFL podcast, so that's what we're running with. Guys, this was awesome. We had to call an audible because we lost Will. We had another guest that had to drop out, unfortunately. But this was 100% worth it. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I could chat with the two of you guys about pop culture and football forever, but we do have an actual podcast, so we want to release this. Anybody who's stuck with us through this random conversation, we hope you enjoyed it. We certainly enjoyed speaking to each other. Thanks as always for listening. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new. Check us out next week, and hopefully that we didn't scare you off too much, but we really appreciate it. We have relaunched our website, so you can go to pigskinpartypodcast.com. It should be live in the next day or two. So we have NFL articles. We have a writer, Ross Crawford, who writes for us, who's going to have really good pieces. We've got a few things coming down the pipe that you can get excited about. Make sure to check us out on all the social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at officialpppod. That's probably the best way to really stay on top of what we're doing here at the Pigskin Party Podcast. You can see this show and all of our other shows and clips on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a Discord community where you can find the link in the episode description if you want to come in and chat with us, give us some ideas about what you want to see for topics or flavor of the week. Palate Cleansers, we've had topics from guests, listeners before, so make sure to check that out. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Should have a normal episode with Will and back. Tommy, you nailed it. You killed it. Welcome to the PPP. Excited to have you. Anthony Wayner, producer extraordinaire, popping into the show. Thank you guys.
Himself.
And we'll see you next week on the PPP.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.